Good morning, wine world. Welcome to another edition of Silicon Valley Bank's direct-to-consumer wine survey and videocast. If you guys are like me, you're still trying to figure out I hate the term new normal, but it's kind of what we're dealing with. And we're trying to just get our own footing. We're back in the studio, which I'm really grateful for. It's nice to be here without masks. It's nice to not be doing Zoom. I got to tell you, it just drives me nuts. I know that you guys are on Zoom watching, but as a presenter, it's always difficult. Can't see you guys. Doing a speech is much easier. As a panel, being here is great. Trying to get through some early morning changes, things that we've done before. But it's just like kind of grinding wheels, and much in the same way I think most of the wine industry has had to deal with coming back out and restarting the business. Some just quick opening notes. You guys probably all know how to run Zoom now, so I'm not going to go through that. Look at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to mention some of the viewers. The U.S. is the largest consuming population of wine in the world, so we have a lot of interest from the entirety of the world. And today we have people from Argentina, Australia, Canada, Chile, France, Moldova, Mexico, Portugal, New Zealand, Spain, South Africa, the UK, and a few others. So I think that's pretty cool. What we're saying here, I think, matters to the world. So it may not be as important as a lot of other things, but at least it matters. I'm going to start with some real quick comments that are kind of off script, because when we started to look through the questions, we found a bunch of questions that were on the economy, inflation, recession, things like that. So that's what I'm going to start with. After that, we'll go to some of these slides. We'll start the conversation. But before I do any of that, I'm going to have the panelists please introduce themselves.
Thanks, Rob. I'm Leah McNalley. I'm the Senior E-commerce Manager for St. Michel Wine Estates. And with the help of a lot of other people, I oversee the DTC portion of the e-commerce.
Do you live in Washington?
No, I live down here in Napa.
Oh, I didn't know you guys had a Napa thing.
I work.
I gave you that time.
Hi, Rob. I'm Jessah Diaz. I am the marketing manager for national brands and DTC for Rutherford Wine Company. So I basically help with both national brands and DTC marketing, and have the pleasure of working with my boss, Nick Berube. And we are a two-man team handling about 7 brands.
I like the way you snuck that last one in. A little suck up is always good.
It's always good.
My boss. Okay, Doctor?
Good morning, Doctor. Paul Mabray. I'm CEO of Pix, enjoying running this new organization that's growing fast. And I love this report, by the way. It's good that we're doing DTC. It's important. I think that DTC has become more relevant than ever, thanks to COVID, and everything that we're talking about hopefully will help us get to the next stage of this emergence of the category even better.
Yeah.
Thanks,
everybody. So I'm just going to go over a few quick things to just talk about some of. We had so many questions. It's not DTC, but I have a hard time avoiding those questions because that's what you guys want. So just a few quick bullet points. So headwinds that we're looking at right now, we've got fuel prices. It's an issue. I don't see them, dropping anytime soon. The factors that are pushing those seem to continue to push them, which, that runs into shipping costs. We've had supply chain things, although that's starting to normalize a little bit. Employee shortages are a big deal. We'll talk about some of that in the report. And of course, that adds to salary dollars. Salaries go up. And when you start adding higher fuel prices, higher shipping costs, higher labor costs, that pushes inflation higher. And increasing interest rates. The Fed is meeting today, likely to come out with a rate increase sometime later. And that impacts everybody as well. Anybody that's borrowing money, if you're on a floating rate basis, that goes up. Long-term rates will likely go up with the increase today. But I'm actually pretty optimistic about what we see ahead. I'm not going to predict any sort of recession or either way. There's too many moving parts for me to actually look at that. But we do have a lot of tailwinds that I think are really positive. Retail sales seem to be doing very well. We still have reopening opportunities. So the restaurant industry is not fully back to where it was pre-COVID. There's still more opening that is taking place there. So I think that's still opportunity for us. We're moving from the goods to a service economy. As we start to move from goods, we were totally a goods economy when we had the lockdowns. Everybody's buying all sorts of stuff, which is part of the reason why we had all these supply chain problems. But moving to a service economy, that has basically a 5 times greater effect than the goods component of our economy. So that really helps GDP. But I think probably the biggest thing that really I think is important as well as two. One is people want to get out of their houses. They want to travel. They still want to get around. To the extent that international travel has still been difficult, is still being difficult. I mean, to get to Europe, at least a couple of weeks ago, you had to fill out forms, you had to get tests, 24 hours, 4 days. I mean, all of that kind of stuff stops, that kind of tourism. I think most of the tourism that we've experienced so far is regional. I think there's some expansion opportunity there. So that's one good thing. Another thing, we sell kind of a luxury good, even though it goes down to the $2.99, $2 segment. It goes obviously way up, and most wine is sold to the upper 20% of wage earners in the United States. So if you look at right now, what happened during the pandemic is the savings rate went right through the roof, and people didn't have any place to spend it. Now, as we start to move back out of this, as we've been continuing to move back out of this, we have roughly $2 trillion in that our target group, the upper 20%. So even if we have some higher rates, whatever those headwinds are, even if we have those, I'm kind of optimistic about the year ahead anyways. Even if we have recession, I think that we're kind of prepared for that, perhaps. We've certainly seen the stock market drop in the last this year anyways. But I think we're kind of prepared for what might come. And I think our kind of customers like wine. Wine is not recession proof, but it's recession resistant. So I'm optimistic about what we have ahead of us. So with that, let's go to slide 4 if we can, Sabrina. And let's talk first about what's happened, and then ask you guys to chime in. But in this last year, and you have to kind of look at the last couple of years together. You can't just look at this year without looking at last year, because what we have in a lot of ways is an unwinding because of COVID, and then a reuptake. And so that reuptake is going to be filled with all sorts of permanent changes, and some of them are temporary. But what you can see in this chart here, in the top segment of it, is the gray bar is tasting room, and the orange bar is wine club. So you can see what happened with tasting room during the recession 2020. It dropped like a stone, and then club kind of continued its upward path. So I've been interested to see in this last year how much tasting room has grown. I think that has a tendency to be part of the reopening component. I think that's a big part of it. I think that the industry has learned a lot of things going through COVID, and to the extent that, as an example, we've had outside tastings now. I don't think those go away. Nobody wants to, build these outdoor tasting facilities and then unwind them. I don't think there's a need. I don't think anybody sees a need for them. I think people see that outdoor tasting actually has a lot of value. So now you have more opportunity to bring more people in if you want. But I've been surprised to see how quickly tasting room kind of spiked back up.
But travel hasn't come back yet. So
yeah,
I think the domestic, where we're, if you walk downtown Napa on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it is packed in the streets, and the highways are fuller than they've ever been from locals, meaning San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento Basin. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we actually had a bet on this last year. We were,
Yep.
and I'm not sure who owes each other a beer, but
I'll buy you a beer.
we were talking about internet, because internet sales just exploded, right? And everybody's aware of what happened. It's passive. You know, we didn't get experts at doing internet sales all of a sudden as producers. That didn't happen, but it was passive. And so I kind of expected to see more of a drop. Bring that slide back up for a second.
Yep.
I expected to see more of a drop in that yellow bar.
And I expected to see more of a rise.
And Paul expect to see more. And it turns out it's kind of about where it was. So we might have to buy each other a beer
Right.
when it, but Paul, you probably have some ideas and thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think that the absorption costs that we're doing, there's a lot going on. And you ladies can probably confirm this, you know, new systems, new hiring of people. I mean, there's a lot of absorption. So there's a lot of training, you know, a lot of people have been redoing their sites like crazy, trying to make up for that. So I think that stalls out the growth. I think next year we'll see some growth as a result, because you see the investment. There's more people in e-commerce. Do you have, how many employees are you using?
We don't have a large group of people handling e-commerce. It's just a 2-person team right now, but we do outsource some of that to an outside agency. And we really try to focus, I think, more on social than we're focusing on the e-com portion. We're sort of passively allowing that to happen. But I think what our plan is for 2023 is to really engage and make sure that we have what we need. So I agree with you. I think there is this transition. I also think a little bit of what's coming into that are these lawsuits that have popped up with ADA compliance. I think that could be showing a little bit of the stall because people really want to make sure that they're in compliance.
Leah, how about you with the?
I actually thought that, I think it's the slide where the planned digital marketing investment, that you're actually seeing that in 2021,
Which
people
slide
had
is that?
15. We had a lot of interest in digital because there was nothing, the tasting rooms were closed.
Right.
But now that tasting rooms are open again, we're just not like, we're kind of going like, okay, that was then, now the tasting rooms are open. So I'm going to go back to what we know rather than continuing to learn and grow the digital side of things.
I think that's part. Also, to your point, the tasting rooms being open are dragging a lot of resources the other way. And
Right.
you guys are all short-staffed. I think labor itself is brutal for wineries in every valley, right? And every service industry. So
And it's not just labor, it's skilled labor.
skilled labor.
I mean,
Skilled
trying to find, you know, I had one of my clients tell me that they went to Whole Foods and they gave a bag boy, you know, a salary on the spot to come over and you know, work at the winery. And you know, it's hard to find whether it's you know, people in restaurants, waiters, you know, all of that kind of staff is really hard to find, and you see it in other economic data with hospitality and tourism still lagging the recovery, which again, that's one of the reasons I think we actually have a couple good years ahead of us because of that lag. So you know, we still have to come out of that.
And I think to speak to that point, if you go back to slide 4, I think that is part of the reason why you're seeing that dip in wine club sales.
Agreed.
I feel like there's just less employment resources and less labor. And so they're stretched thin, right? They're not having that experience with the guests where they can really hand sell them the wine club because they have so many other people they have to jump around to. So I think that could be a direct, you know, sort of something that's causing that, a cause for that. And I'm interested to see how that will change.
What kind of permanent changes have you guys, what kind of permanent changes do you expect? Now, we just talked about internet sales. That's
Increase by appointment is forever. I mean, we saw that trend line coming for years, but COVID nailed that in for sure. I think you're going to continue to see the by appointment, you know, scheduled tastings increase over time still. You know, I think we're just barely touching it. Everything digital, that's a forever thing, whether it's reservations digitally, whether it's, you know, e-commerce, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
let's look at Sabrina. Let's look at slide. I think it's 14. I hope it's 14.
Urban tasting rooms, by the way, is another one.
Yes.
And we'll do urban tasting rooms next. But here's your slide on industry by appointment. You can see what happened with, if I'm reading my numbers right, by appointment went from 17 in pre-COVID, 17% of total to 29%. And then I think, but the telling thing is the both. So both went from 27% to 44%. And so that's, I mean, if you're in the wine industry and you say, well, I am by appointment pure. I mean, there are some that are that, but a lot of them, it's, look, if I got a spot and somebody comes up to the front door parked, and they can call me and say, can I have an appointment? And and you'll serve them. I've been saying for a long time that the by appointment model is the one that makes sense, but I mean, what do you guys believe?
Well, I think it gives control back to your tasting room staff. I think it's an ability to plan ahead. It's an ability to make sure you give the best service possible. And also, I think it cuts down on liability when people come in and they're sort of all rowdy and everybody, you could tell they've been a little overserved perhaps. You have the ability to say, sorry, we're reservation only, and it's sort of a good out. How do you feel about that, Leah? Same.
I feel like, yes, it definitely helps with planning and dealing with the staffing. It's a double-edged sword though. Like, where are you at where, like, are you turning possible guests away because you're rigidly stuck in the reservation system now? Or as we're seeing kind of both grow, are you kind of going with the flow a little bit? Like, you're giving those people that make reservations first crack at everything, but you're still taking walk-in visitors to more efficiently fill and use your labor as you can. And I think that I'm going to just say, from people I've talked with a little bit of the traveling that I've done that are kind of not in the industry and friends and visitors, I feel like there's a lag with the general tourism public, even in understanding that everything is by appointment only now, or a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I've talked with a lot of people that have gone like, oh, I had no idea I had to have reservations. For every winery.
And I think that's very true. This is something though that has been a very long time in coming. This is one of these places where there is so much fear about maybe losing some income, but there's so many more benefits, in my opinion, to having, I mean, not only do you have people sign up, but you're collecting their personal data. That gives you much better chances to engage. And maybe the thing we didn't think about before was labor, and the staffing component of it. It gives you that surety.
Enhancing the experience in general. I know many tasting rooms look at the customers on the email list and check them up on LinkedIn. What do they do? How do they think? Where are they from? They ask them special questions now, saying, what are your food allergies? What do you like? What's your experience? So you get a lot more to tailor the experience to build a better, average order value, honestly, and to give the customer, the guest, what they want.
Let's move just a notch off of that. We talked about last night. We talked about texting.
Yes.
About the, and I don't think we have any slides on texting necessarily. There might be one, but it'd be a small one if it is. When I look at the experience, if I got a text from somebody that says, hey Rob, we're looking forward to you coming here. We have a parking space reserved, or park into the, so and so will come out and meet you. Or come up to the desk. If I had that kind of thing, I would say to myself, okay, I'm not in the masses. I'm not walking into a tasting room where I'm going to have to throw elbows. And let's face it, in a COVID world, how many more tasting rooms can we have that are we going to go back to that? Where we have bars and elbow to elbow? I don't think that works. But texting, what do you think about texting?
I think there's a lot of parts of DTC we don't talk about. Obviously telemarketing is not really represented well, and it's always been kind of looked down in the industry, but texting is, the fact that we're not using it or having it in our conversation sphere is a real shame. It's just another digital outreach. It's very effective. And to your point, whether you're getting an Uber coming or DoorDash and saying, hey, your DoorDasher is coming, all those tools use texting messages. And we as an industry have kind of frowned upon it for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'd love to hear how you guys use texting or not, or why.
We don't use texting, but I think it's a huge opportunity. I just think it has been overlooked, right?
Talk to your boss here.
It's sort of, it sort of has been something that people are hesitant to get into. They're more on the telemarketing route. But I think to your point, you brought this up last night, this gives the consumer the power to answer back when they want to.
Correct.
You know, you're not giving them a 9 to 5. This is when you have to call us. This is when you have to engage with us. You're allowing those texts to be automated. And I think it's huge for people and something that even small wineries can do. So if I were advising someone with a small winery, I'd say, carve out some of your budget to have texting, because it's the easiest way to get to your consumer, get to them when they want to sort of check it, and then also to personalize an experience like you were talking about.
And I think there's some automated components of texting that are pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
And that we're all used to at this point.
Right.
That I you know, as an example, you can automate, you know, we're looking forward to coming, you know, press 1 if you're, you know,
Still coming.
press 2 if you're not.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I think that's probably an important thing to consider in the experience equation.
I was going to say, I think people feel like texting as opposed to where emails become, and I love email marketing, by the way,
Yeah.
but that texting still feels like really immediate. And the idea that you might send out even a mass text to people and get a personal response to someone, like I think people still feel texting is a very personal medium.
Yeah.
Right.
Email used to
It's
be
not
that,
like the blast.
but I
Yeah.
mean, email used to be that too. I think texting it's an immediate answer. It's a delivery system. We just look at. But speaking of, let's pull up the email slide. I'm very curious. You know, so this is the second year you've done a survey. It's number 7. I'm sorry. Apologies. So this is the second year you've done a survey about how the frequency of sending email out. I think we were shocked last year how many people sent, you know, monthly or quarterly, you know, emails. It's fascinating to look at it now. I mean, you look at this, we're still 45% of the people barely send more than once a week. You know, so the industry is pretty still lagging. It's only changed 5% to go into higher frequency.
And you would have thought that you would have seen, and I'm sure we did, but I didn't have the pre-COVID numbers. I would have expected to see a huge growth in email marketing, and we probably did. I don't have that data right in front of me. From pre-COVID to the COVID era. It's interesting though that nothing's really changed through COVID.
Well, I find it surprising. I would love to hear from you ladies on this piece, which is for the first time ever, we found we could send lots of emails to people and they responded to it and they didn't unsubscribe from our lists. And we were very worried about that pre-COVID. And COVID, we beat the heck out of our lists. I think we can all say that just to move some wine. And yet the industry as general has not moved up in that frequency, but the people that have, your numbers are up probably in your e-commerce.
And unsubscribe rates are about the same.
Yep.
We didn't see a massive amount of unsubscribes happen because of increased frequency. But I will say probably the program that I work on is already emailing somewhere between twice a month to weekly, depending on the brand. But it was interesting that way. So people are receptive to it. They're not necessarily unsubscribing, and there's a lot of opportunity still in email marketing.
Yeah, let's look at. I hope I get this right. So slide 29, and this is Wine Club change in growth, attrition, and churn rate. Yeah. So you're just talking about you know what the attrition rates were in clubs, and I think this is a fascinating slide. So. The orangey yellowy bar, that one is attrition, and the blue bar is growth, and the purple bars are it is growth divided by attrition. So if you had, as an example, 100% growth, but you had 100% attrition, you know, that would be a good thing. That would be a bad thing, and that purple bar would be 1. It would be up at the top. And you don't want that. Obviously, what you're looking for as a growth number is something that's high. If you have a let's say, you know, 40% growth, but you have 40% attrition at the same time, you know, your acquisition cost has just gone through the roof. So you have to change that a little bit. But just fascinating to see what happened in 2020. You would have thought that attrition would have been much higher. And you know, but it really has been, attrition rate's been reasonably flat. Growth rate is the one that dropped through the floor. You can see that it's kind of recovered.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your experiences?
I think people were just, it was a knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic in 2020, and they were cutting spending wherever they could, right? And I think wine club is a luxury. It's not something you need. It's not a necessity. And people had fears. And so you saw that growth rate just drop. As far as I'm not joining a wine club, that's just not for me, but I might buy some bottles. And I think that's where the e-commerce portion of it really came in, where that was really high. But wine club was sort of a harder sell. And now that tasting rooms are opening up, and now that people are getting a little bit more on their feet, I feel like you're going to see that growth rate continue to expand, and hopefully the attrition rate continue to stay flat.
Yeah, or ideally drop. That would,
Yeah.
We aren't seeing big changes in average length of customers in clubs. That's kind of always hanging around 30 months. It'd be
Which
great.
is a problem.
Yeah,
That's a problem. By the way.
yeah. It would be nice, even if the average number would go up by more people not getting out at the first year,
Mhm.
that would be good.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just the average number, but I think one of the things we're seeing, and I don't have great data on this, so I won't go into it too far, but I think we're seeing right now the younger generations that have joined clubs. I think that their attrition rates a little bit faster than previous. So that's something we'll have to keep our eye on.
When I look at that slide, it says to me that like wine club growth dropped in 2020 because tasting rooms were closed. And if that's your main acquisition channel.
Well, your main benefit channel. Let's talk.
And your main benefit, exactly. We were talking about that last night, your main benefit channel. You just weren't getting those, you didn't have those people to sell. I mean, those are fantastic qualified customers, but you didn't have anybody to sell the club to. And even on the other slide where you were talking about benefits, but on the slide where we looked at digital club acquisition, that it's still a fairly small channel.
Well, I think we need to redefine the club in general. I think, we talk about making it choose your own club. That's not the problem. COVID showed us in this decline. I think this is the problem, that we didn't give the benefits of them going to go to tastings and open dinners and all the different things I think that's the problem with wine clubs. If you're a person in Boston, you come to Napa once every 5 years or Sonoma once every 3, all of the benefits you provide to the club members are not a benefit to that person living in that city.
And as everybody that watches me knows, I have a view that we have to figure out how to take the experience on the road. And I thought Zoom was going to do that. That we would actually be able to use Zoom in an ongoing way. But people just bailed out of Zoom as fast as they could. And I think that drop that we see in growth has a lot more to do with just the inability to have those people come through the tasting room. Now, if we do know that it's about 17% average growth from club membership comes from digital. And I think we all are in agreement that that's probably a passive thing, that people are signing up
Without question.
that way versus
Great question,
an
yeah.
active thing that where we're actually out trolling for members. And my hope, with COVID was that we looked at the risk of how much we had into the tasting room model and how important that was to generate club memberships. And that we at some point would actually look to take the experience. It's going to be a different experience, but to take that experience on the road. I personally hope that we find a way to go back and use Zoom.
I think you're right about value exchange, but can we pull up slide number, let's call it 6, I think, which is the different spend by channel or which platforms. I think the thing that was most amazing about COVID was really the great awakening of e-commerce. You guys are both large brands. E-commerce became relevant. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Justin Nolan, and I've talked about digitally native vertical brands. DTC for big brands are not just about the dollar revenue that you gain; they're also about the customer insights and knowledge you do. So if you look at 19 Crimes, which is hugely successful for Treasury, a great brand, and it sells DTC. It's not selling DTC to make money, particularly. It's also to learn about the customer footprint. Just like Nike, I think Nike is 40% direct to consumer now, not just to make money. Think about that. A shoe brand, 40% direct to consumer, so they can understand how to make better products and understand the voice of the consumer. And that's one of the reasons I love Justin Nolan. He's really trying to get into the minds of the consumer so you can make better programs, whether it's customizing spotlight products, whether it's changing a wine club. that has a different offering that may not be an experience, maybe a Snoop Dogg CD, I'm making it up, but in the package. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
really fascinating.
Yeah, it's,
And when you look at the digital platforms that we are employing, it's kind of sleepy. There's not a lot of change in this. We're still doing social media, which is nice. I remember the days when, I don't know, 15 years or more ago, when Paul was explaining to me, social media, and, you got to tweet twice a day, whether you need to or not. You just have to, right? And that, I mean, this is,
I did say that.
yeah, it taught me everything I know about social. So, and still you can see that 90% today now are at least using social media. So, we're there.
I find the numbers very strange, though. I mean, 60% of people using e-com seems very slow compared to what you see in the market. I just don't understand that number. Maybe
We always seem to be slow to adopt.
yes.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons why.
well, I think in the survey too, it was easy to check that box if you were just passively using e-commerce and not being more proactive about
Right.
actual digital marketing.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing pay-per-click, or if you're not doing retargeting is a little bit harder, but if you're not doing display advertising
Yeah.
in different
Yeah.
places, you just like, I have a website, people are coming to it. Are you doing any SEO,
Yeah.
for instance? And didn't that fall into the other category, I
Yeah.
believe, which is pretty
Yeah,
small.
and it's nice that we have websites. We're making progress. I remember, again, about 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was, and Paul actually had a company at that point, it's probably more like 20 plus years ago, that was about setting up website, the sites themselves. And back then we were talking about, well, do you have your address on the site? Do you have your phone number on the site? So we really are evolving, and the tools that are available now, compared to, no offense to your old business, but that was 20 whatever years
No
ago.
offense to what's
Tech-
called, it still is bad. No, I'm joking. But that's also been great. The tools that you have available to you as e-commerce has been at a rapid rate. I mean, Commerce 7 continues to move the market. Shopify is available for small boutique wineries. There's the new Vine base if you're a really micro, under 500 cases or under 1,000 cases. So there's all these new tools that are out there. And the consolidation industry, you saw Commerce 7 bought Vine Spring, wasn't it? Vino Shipper bought DTC something, so there's a lot of consolidation finally to make the tools move faster. And I think that you're going to see more of that as well. The market's not big enough to support 29 e-commerce vendors, which we have in there. We don't have enough wineries to support this.
Yeah, it's got to consolidate.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will.
And we're seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether that actually happens this year or not, it will be interesting. The M&A and consolidation, the markets for IPOs, as an example, is pretty much closed right this second.
Yeah.
With interest rates going up, that's going to slow down the kind of deals that you normally see. It's, people that are buyers are going to ask for lower price when if you're going to have to pay more for your financing costs to buy something. So that's, that'll put a separation between buyers and sellers again, and that'll slow all the M&A down a little bit. But yeah, you're still going to have to see some of that, work itself out.
We had a question from the audience that they want to ask. So Chastity Cooper asked, if there was a slight reduction in digital marketing investment for 2022, how do wineries hope to reach new guests to visit their winery or to buy wine if they're reducing their spend? That's the question she's asking.
I don't know.
It's a
What do you
great
guys-
question. I don't think you really can. I think maybe what they're saying is they're allocating that money back to experiences. So I think there might be a little bit of a sort of misdirection there where they're missing the opportunity to actually get people there and spending a little bit more time thinking about the experience once they get there. I feel like that's sort of the trend that I've seen. I don't know how you've looked at it.
I think that probably there is a little bit of a disconnect. It's like that in the slide was showing the investment actually going down for 2022, because we're just so used to the fact that, we're just going to put it out there and people are going to come, but
Right.
there's a lot of competition in the market. And just because somebody's going to come to your wine region, whether that's Napa or New York or, wherever you're, Virginia, wherever you're at, you've got a lot more competition right? So
Yeah.
how are you going to stand out from the crowd and make sure that people want to come to your winery even
Mhm.
once they get to their destination?
Let's expand the aperture, as my boss likes to say. That's a funny term to me, but let's expand the aperture and let's talk about. Let's pull up slide 24 if we can, Sabrina. This is to me an interesting slide because we're looking at conversion rates with urban versus at the vineyard and the winery tasting room, and then there's both in the middle. But we were earlier, referencing what's happened with urban tasting rooms, and so when we're looking to grow club, is this a viable way? And let me go back one step, and it wasn't that long ago when people were putting in urban tasting rooms, and let's just say the average tasting fee was $35 at the winery. They would just say, well, it's $35 in the urban tasting room too, and a totally different experience. So I have a blog that I'll post pretty soon. It's are you selling the LP or are you selling the concert? And the notion is what are we actually doing as people that are selling luxury goods? Are we selling just the experience? Obviously we're selling both, but I think we've really evolved a lot in how we do the experience at the urban tasting room. Do you guys have urban tasting rooms? I know St. Michelle does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do.
yeah.
And I would say it's a mix. I think to make it be successful, that you have to think about what the public wants in an urban setting and how that might be different than what they want when they come to the winery, and probably be a little flexible about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessah?
We don't have an urban tasting room. I think it's something that's a really interesting concept, and I've seen people do it really well, especially in Napa. And I think that goes a little bit back to access, right? Like you're in the middle of Napa, you're there, you're in where you can shop and eat and do all of these things. And you don't maybe necessarily want to drive all the way up to Calistoga in order to go to a winery. So I think it's an interesting possibility for wineries, but I think for smaller wineries, maybe not so much. And I also think you're able to get to a consumer in a bunch of different ways in an urban winery or an urban setting. You're able to do wine by the glass. You're able to do maybe bottle service, possibly if you have all of the correct, stuff that you're supposed to have. And so I think that's a different model, but one that's super interesting, and I think people should explore.
Well, what's fascinating about it is urban tasting rooms 3 years ago were failures in Napa. Right?
Yeah.
And now they're booming. Alpha Omega downtown is full. And what was the economic term you pulled out last night? That
The agglomeration effect.
yes.
Yeah. And the basic notion of an agglomeration effect is, if you put a department store in the middle of a field, nobody comes. Or if somebody's just open at night and everybody else is closed in a mall, nobody really comes. But if everybody's open or you have a bunch of stores together, then you have a lot more people. So there's a draw. There is a limit to that, though. I know my friends in Santa Barbara have struggled at times with some of the ordinances in the region that require basically all of the tastings to be downtown. And so now you start to run into a pub crawl. And what's your experience? Well, it can be degraded by having too many people in the middle of it. But there's no question that having the opportunity to have an urban tasting room is probably worthwhile. I have another one of I guess he's not a client, he's a friend of mine, that opened up a tasting room, an urban tasting room in a nice kind of a Blackhawk is the name of the area, and it's a more of a wealthy area, and I think that's a great idea. You end up being the only wine tasting room in that section, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, we do have the ability now, at least in California, to open up more than that single tasting room. I think we're in the process or have passed laws that allow us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big proponent of using the urban tasting room to attract younger consumers. I know I beat this to death, but you know, we can't continue to rely on the older consumers to pay the freight. There's just no, it's obvious we can't. We've got to bring in these new consumers.
Ron. I'm depending on you.
Yeah, well, we're going to have some, you know, as I say, a sunsetting of the older consumer. I will not be sunsetting, thank you. But some of the older consumers obviously are going to, and so we've got to replace them. And I think urban tasting rooms are a really fascinating path to get some of those. So,
Well, it's risk reduction. You're putting in a glass so they can taste it easy,
Yeah.
quick and out. There's no commitment. There's no hard sell for the club.
yeah,
I mean, really, you're putting, you know, juice on lips.
if you have a you know, music that is more you know, in somebody in 30s 40s, you know, versus Frank Sinatra, you know, that's probably useful during the day. I know I've got one client that likes to bring in a guitar player in the afternoon to try to draw in younger people, and you know, they encourage them to dwell. You know, and that's one form of engagement. I used to think that, you know, the idea of any tasting room was like restaurants, you know, you want to turn tables.
Mhm.
And I've moved off of that, I think, because the generations that are coming in, you know, I think they like to linger a little bit more. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a trend going on too, that you want to do less things, but you want those things to be more engaging and an experience and impactful. And so I think what you're speaking about, it really talks to more of an experience that's longer, and I'm going to go to less places. So you really want to capture that person when they're in your tasting room and make sure they're having that experience. I think it's hugely important. I think it's something that, you know, we're looking at that trend because people were stuffed away in their houses so much with COVID that they didn't get to go. And so they're sort of like, you know, you only live once now. Like, they're going to do whatever they want to do at the highest price.
There's a lot of questions about packaging and shipping
yeah, I was
that are
just gonna
coming
say-
in through
yeah,
right now. So
yeah,
I would
was
love
just looking at shipping.
There's one question like, are we going to move to bag in the box? And I'd love to hear what your guys' perspectives on what you're doing to mitigate shipping or to help make it easier.
I think shipping's, I'm sure that there's not a single person in winery DTC out there that deals with shipping, that's not a big topic on their mind.
Yeah.
The shipping rates have gone up a lot, and
Right.
along with all of your cost of goods as well. You know,
Right.
it's kind of that whole kind of a little bit of the inflation. You might not even have wanted to raise prices, but you're kind of forced to because of the increase.
Right.
And I mean, I think that there's a lot of opportunities, I think, at a certain level to try to do more things like bag in the box. I know cans, for instance, I feel like that's had some adoption, but not necessarily a super wide adoption. I think we found that there's a really specific audience for cans, and especially a season for cans when people sort of want them, and then when they don't want them, they don't. You know, I think we have to just raise the expectations of what you can get. For instance, if you're looking at bag in a box sort of wine, that it's really top quality. And I know a couple of producers are doing that, but kind of taking away the stigma of that.
Right.
I think there's a lot to be like, we think a lot with marketing that, like, even for the really luxury high-end wines, that they have to be in a really heavy bottle and like really super premium glass. And I really
They're good
wonder how
weapons,
much,
by the way.
like you're pouring and your arm is like shaking from the weight there, you know, like, do we really need that? Can you get your brand proposition across without having like a 5-pound
That's a
hunk of
big
glass?
question. You know, the
in your
Jessah,
hand?
Robinson, everyone have signed petitions and are rating wines based upon the heaviness and reducing that. But I think that's a good question. There's the Garçon bottles, they're the flat PET bottles that you guys have seen. I think Ron Rubin's come out with those. I saw a really interesting innovation, the Coravin stuff that you can see here, where they take the bottles out and put it into smaller sizes with oxygen. It's very cool. They showed it. I can't wait to see it in production. I know they've got 10 wineries they're launching that with. You can see little bottles on the other side of my computer there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's fascinating. That's a great, but I mean, we need to get smarter about how we ship wine. That's one of the big barriers.
so Coravin, I'm pretty sure they're a client. We've been consulting with them since startup, really, at Silicon Valley Bank. And, you know, they started with just gas, I think it's argon that, that replaces wine. And so you get just, by the glass. And then I think a lot of restaurants have gone to that for super expensive wines in particular. But now they've moved off a little bit, and there are a number of different competitors that are trying to do the same thing, which is to you have to get by in some form or fashion. It's back to the on-ramp question about on-ramps.
That's right.
Tasting room is an on-ramp.
Smaller size, cost.
But what other ways can we get to sample?
Yep.
Restaurants, we're getting very expensive in by the glass programs, and we're just not really competitive in a lot of ways with spirits, and we're losing share. So anything that we can do as individual producers to increase that trial, trial is, you have to get the trial before you get to purchase.
That's right.
Right. And as I always say, the most important purchase is the second one. So figuring out ways to do trial is, I think, important. So Corbin's got this, but there are others that are doing similar things. So I think that's a good start.
Yeah, I think packaging is important. I think we need to explore different ways to get wine to people inexpensively, and the heavy bottles are not going to get us there.
Yeah.
Sure. Hey, back to on-ramps, there's a number of wineries now, as people that watch me know, I've been talking for a long time about how we need to change the way we market and sell, particularly as it relates to things like calories. We don't put calories in the bottle, and there's a health component that is clearly being pushed by a number of different areas, the WHO for one, and the consumer is looking at health now as being an important component of what they consume. And so there is a better for you component. I think we've gone the wrong way as an industry with the better for you, because we've actually in many cases become internally focused. Like, if I'm better for you than my neighbor, that's a net sum zero game. In the end, if you're going to start, saying, look, I'm the only one that has no additives. I'm the only one, I'm pick your name, pure,
Clean
true.
wine is dirty marketing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that is a net sum zero game, and eventually it backfires on anybody that wants to take that path. I think the better approach is to just talk about in the positive way what you do provide, like calories, without saying, I'm lower calories than him or her, say how many calories you have, how many calories in the bottle. I think that's a critical thing. How do you guys think that attracting that consumer that is concerned about health, how does that play into direct consumer marketing? Do you give any thought of that?
We actually we're launching a Better For You innovation shortly, and we are including the calorie count on, per serving on the bottle to let everybody know, as well as carbs per serving. And I believe, the alcohol percentage, obviously, which always has to be on there. So I think we are thinking of that consumer, and we're thinking of selling to them not only as a national brand, but also through DTC, because you want to be able to reach people omni-channel. We talk about it all the time, but I think you're right. There is a consumer out there. I think it's not everybody, right? I don't think everybody wants to know the calorie count of their wine. I think some people just are sort of like, keep me in the dark. Thanks so much. But I think there is a consumer, and I think that we are missing the trend, and we're allowing hard seltzers and other innovation to kind of push wine out. And so we need to compete in that area for Better For You.
And do you think it hurts? We think of wine, especially premium luxury wines, as being traditional. You want to see a chateau on the label or something like that. Hopefully not a heavy bottle. But does that thing hurt the luxury brand to actually put calories on a luxury brand? Do you think that hurts or helps, or is?
I don't know. How
Hard
do
to
you
say.
feel about that? I don't know that it would be the right marketing strategy for certain luxury brands. I would be kind of against it. I
don't think it should be a forward marketing. It should be more of a passive thing to me, so that people that really do care about that can see it. People do watch their calories, and so
there's a solution for everyone, right? You could have a luxury brand marketing with a QR code that goes to a website that has calories and ingredients. I mean, I think we are thinking through a mono lens about the world, and the world is an omni experience, right?
Yeah.
We have the Library of Alexandria in our pocket. Can we pull up slide number 10 if you don't mind? I really want to come back to this digital spend, and I think it's important that we anchor this. That recidivism that we have going backwards because of all of
How do you
the
say that?
yeah, just kind of going. So the fact that we're going and spending more money on the easy money, which is our taste room, which are booming at this point, as you saw by the numbers, and we took the money away from a hard thing to spend on. Now, I think if you look at the major enterprise level wineries, Treasury, Gallo, Constellation, they're spending more money on St. Michel. You're spending more money on digital than you did ever before, and it's opening up. And little wineries have went back to the taste room spend. And I think that's where you see the dissonance in this play. But I can guarantee that it's not, we're looking at it as if it's one pie. We're making a bigger pie by spending on e-com and digital. And I understand one of the reasons is that we're also going back as little wineries. Where do you spend that money as a little winery? Facebook, Twitter. It's hard to find the right answer. And it feels like you're failing forward, and you are. And I think that's the part that most middle and small wineries are struggling with this year in this digital spend is we spent money, some of it worked, some of it didn't, some worked marginally, some worked great, but no one has the formula because what works for your winery is very different than your winery, is very different than my wife's winery, is very different than how Justin Nolan spends across his brands.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of opportunities to, you know, invest in many spots within the digital thing and have success. There's, you know, it used to be that the business models were pretty focused. You know, if I go back into the late 80s and early 90s, making wine was the dominant competitive issue. You had to make good wine. Not everybody did.
Right.
But if you made good wine, it sold. And then we moved to a point where having good relations with your distributor, that was the dominant competitive issue. If you didn't have that, it was really hard to get anywhere because we didn't have really direct to consumer, and tasting room wasn't a thing. It was, you know, mostly people would come in from far away to taste, so that when they went to back to their hometown, they would actually go to the grocery store and buy that wine. We had, you know, no tasting fees at that point. And after that, you know, we started to evolve to DTC because the large distributors started to
delist.
to delist. That's right. Today, what I see is the dominant competitive issue is management. And there are so many different ways to skin a cat now, and many of them work. And the thing that it's hard for me to say, well, if you do this, then, you know, you're going to be successful. It really gets down to if you have the good model, if you're doing your work, if you're looking at data, you have a much stronger likelihood to be successful.
I agree. We have to do that spend, that we have to learn this lesson. Otherwise, you know, and it's going to feel like we're losing money for a while sometimes until we find the formula that works for our winery size. You know, like what works for Scarecrow is going to be very different than works for Barefoot. There are going to be very different digital spells and ads. And we know that already.
Yeah.
But there's no formula. I can't tell you. There's no expert in the world. Even the best of us can't tell you what works for that winery exactly at that time. You know, Brooks Winery in Oregon versus Dow and Paso Robles are going to have different formulas.
Well, one of the things that I talk about, and by the way, just quick sidebar, any of my customers that want to have management presentations, I'm more than happy to have these kind of conversations with you, directly.
Same. Yeah, we'll go double team on that because they need to spend some more money to, you know, unlock this.
But what's interesting about this slide, though, if you look, there is one area that's up, and that's hiring dedicated employees to digital. So people are wanting expertise in that area. I think, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think this goes back to finding that skilled labor and being able to attract that talent. And I don't know if that maybe has a little bit to do with maybe people should think that person can be remote. I mean, it's a digital role, you know.
Also the spend.
Yeah.
The
There's
spend.
a lot of competition for those people.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many digital wine experts can you name, you know, out in the
True.
world?
Yeah.
5, 6, you know, in wine. And what we have to spend for them is much more than we're used to because we're competing against San Francisco and Silicon Valley, right?
We had a lot of questions from signups about the end of premiumization, which is an interesting thing to me because as you look right now, if you look at SipSource data as an example, which is SipSource data is agglomerated data from most of the wholesalers, and they don't list it by dollars, but by volumes. You know, you can see you know, pretty well what's happening, and it's pretty clear that under $11 category is, is not doing well at all. It's off like 10%, and that's 75% of total volume sales. So it's a huge part of the industry that I don't want to say it's failing, but if you're a vineyard guy, you're selling by tons, and if volume's dropping, that's a concern. And for me, the under $11 category is a major concern because that's one of the on-ramps. It's historically been one of the on-ramps. And again, quick, we did talk about Wine Ramp in the State of the Industry report and the videocast. And we, after 2 years of effort and collaborating with various people within the industry, we had a research and promotions order kind of lined up with financing behind it. And we announced that in January in the State of the Industry report, but we had other voices that once we announced that, other voices came in and put the gouache on it basically. And so that whole thing fell apart. So Wine Ramp is still listening, seeing if there's any way that we can help. It's just 4 volunteers, by the way. We're trying to find ways to help that under $11 category in particular, but we haven't had success thus far. So back to the point though about premiumization. Is this the end of premiumization? And so some people want to say, well, the under $11 category is doing poorly and the above that is doing better. And actually the higher you go, the better it is. So premiumization is alive. It's still happening. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't see the end to premiumization because I feel like people, again, they want maybe less, but something that is in their minds more luxury. We just had an innovation that launched Torsia, which is our high-end wine, and pre-sales were amazing for it, and distributors wanted it. And I think it speaks to the consumer. I think, again, if they're going to spend money, they're going to spend it, not as high volume, but they're going to buy something really great and something that's in that higher price category.
I feel like we were also talking this morning about have we done a good enough job? We're kind of back to capturing that consumer who's probably interested in the under $11 category.
Yeah.
And are we losing those people to things like hard seltzer and beer in particular, because we haven't done a really great job of being really conclusive, being rather appealing to a very broad spectrum of consumers. Yeah. Not just kind of.
Yeah, we are losing those.
Yeah.
We should look at it a little bit different way, but I don't have the slide. It's in the it's in the State of the Industry report, but Danny Brager, myself, Dale Stratton, MJ Dale, who are Wine Ramp, commissioned a Harris poll to do a poll. And the question was, what would you bring, what wine, what alcoholic beverage would you bring to a party? Because I was really curious to see if young consumers would even think about it. And as it turns out, 65 and above, half of the 65 and above said they would bring wine to a party. 65 and below, so 64, there's a 20% drop. It was like falling off of a cliff. And they would say they'd start bringing other things besides. So it's not necessarily that we are not attracting the young consumer. It's that this older consumer who put wine in a very special category is sunsetting, and it's being replaced by people who are more frugal and view wine not as a special beverage. Even luxury wine is not there as they like it, but we're not pulling them into being the same consumers that boomers were. I don't know that that's even possible now.
But I mean, do you think you've always spoken about the affluence curve? Is it the delay of the younger generation getting the affluence curve? Because when you look at the psychographics of wine, it plays harder to people that are in that time of their life where they're making their money, they have kids in their home.
Yeah. Well, the millennial generation now is into their 40s, and when you start to look at the other data, it proves out, why wouldn't we see more of an increase when you're looking at 35 to 55 is the period of time where you would expect to see most people spend their money.
Mhm.
And it's just not having that.
But they were delayed in getting the money.
They were delayed, but will they, let's just say they started 10 years late. Does that mean that it's going to start at 55 or
I don't know.
45? The data that I've seen show not. But let's get back to premiumization real quick. So is there an end to premiumization? And I would say the answer is yes and no. Because if you think that, I used to say premiumization is the ability to sell at higher costs at higher volumes. That's premiumization to me.
Mhm.
The idea that we're selling lower volumes, especially on the less expensive wines, and we're just starting to, ramp up into, higher priced wines, doesn't sound like a great inevitable solution for me to sales growth. And let's be clear. I mean, total sales right now for the wine industry, nobody's got perfect data, but on a volume basis, it's right around zero. Right around zero.
Mhm.
That's not good growth.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. What else? Let's see. We talked about labor. We talked about inflation. Somebody wanted to talk about paleo.
Hey,
Yeah. What else? Paul, do you?
so it's people are asking what people's experiences are expected. Is there a different relationship that Gen Z and millennials have with tasting rooms than boomers and Gen X?
Yeah. So I have a
You have a slide for that.
no, I
Oh,
don't, but I have a theory, and so I'll give you a quick story. Is my stepdaughter went into a tasting room once in the Napa Valley, and brought some of her friends, and they walked in, and there were nothing but gray hair people in the tasting room, and they felt uncomfortable. They went outside, and they ended up, it was winter, and they were, they had a nice experience, outside. And every now and then somebody would come out and say, "Can I help you? Any questions?" Blah blah blah. And so they lingered, and they had a great experience. So we do have to kind of specialize or drill down so that we give the consumers what they want. And you got to have people in your tasting room with gauges, sleeves and that kind of stuff, so that are going to talk that language. I think the older consumer is more than fine hanging out with younger consumers. It's the other way around that I think it becomes uncomfortable.
I think we need to get you gauges, is what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
That's what
That's what we're.
I need to get myself a sleeve.
Mhm.
sleeves.
I do it. I just don't know what to wear.
Let me ask you a question about marketing automation for you ladies. How much marketing automation are you using in your programs?
I would say we're not really up on marketing automation at the moment. I mean, I think, when it comes to like reservations, we use Talk. So they send out an email after the consumer has been with us.
Right.
And I think that's a great follow-up, but I think we could definitely get better at making sure that we know what the experience was and looking at that data and sort of tailoring. How are you guys doing with that?
Similar. My answer would have been not enough.
Yeah.
We
same.
we have some of those things that we're doing. We definitely have some basic marketing automation, but the kind of marketing automation that I think that you see outside of the wine industry in the retail e-commerce world, we're not anywhere close to doing that. And some of those things like browse abandonment and abandoned cart
Sure.
and those
Basics
sorts
outside
of,
of
yeah,
wine.
Right.
yeah, that are just really basic outside of the industry. We're not using those at all. And I think some of that goes back to, do you have a CRM system, right? And have you put that into place?
Maybe
And
map
it
your
can be,
customer journey too.
yeah, and map your customer journey, because that can be, it's labor intensive and it's expensive in some cases.
And you need
And
experienced people. right?
yeah, and you need experienced people to do it, especially even if a smaller winery, if you go into a system like, let's say Clavio,
Yeah.
which is,
yeah.
somebody still has to
Yep.
drill down and understand how to set up all those steps. And it's
Right.
not,
That's a great example. I mean, Commerce 7 comes baked with all this marketing automation software.
Oh.
I can't tell you how many wineries turn it off
Yep.
because they don't understand how a customer is going to get.
it's overwhelming.
It
it-
feels fearful for them in that piece. And
Yeah.
it's baked in. It's best practices. It's free.
And it's just like, I don't understand how, like, what's going to happen if I do this? Maybe I'm going to do something bad, something's going to go wrong, or
Yeah.
you
Or I
know, my
think people-
customers are going to get mad at me because they're going to get one too
Yeah.
many
We're
emails.
planning for the exception
Yeah.
versus the fat myth. I
Right.
think
And
that-
we're like afraid to audit too, right? Because this is another thing that we're putting on our plates. We have to audit those emails, those automated emails every
a
single
frequency,
month.
yeah.
And we need to be looking at them, and do they make sense still? Is the information still relevant?
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
it's really daunting for people, but I think it is the way you need to go. Commerce 7 also has cart carrots, which I feel like half of the people who are on Commerce 7 don't use, and they're amazing. They are selling to people in the cart, and it's such a great feature. And so if you can just spend a little bit of time really perfecting those things, I think it could go a long way.
I agree.
Yeah.
Let's bring up slide 17 if we can. Shift gears to visitors. I think that this is a fascinating slide, just because what you can see is the dip in COVID, what happened with visitation.
Mhm.
Just,
sure.
you know, it just dropped through the floor, and then afterwards, it expanded. Now, our friends in Virginia and New York have a little bit of a different model than most of the West Coast. A lot of them have there's more hotels, there's more restaurants involved, so the experience is probably a little bit different, and they see a higher level of consumers. But they saw that same change. Santa Barbara, I mean, wow, what a change there. You know, the growth rate that they have in visitors, and remembering that they're mostly urban. So the tourism board there, I think, is working overtime for sure. You know, I kind of expect to see, as we move more toward a by appointment model, fewer visitors, because you know, if you used to bring in, you know, a visitor every 10 minutes, you know, now you're bringing in a visitor every half hour, or something later. And so I would think that these numbers should drop, and maybe it wouldn't be alarming to see that. But I don't know, what are your thoughts about visitation right now, especially through the last 2 years?
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely, I think this chart is spot on. We've definitely seen an increase from 2020, obviously, but it's just not back to the level that it was. But I wonder if that's not the consumer doing far less wineries in one trip and just really focusing on a few really special experiences. I also think, I mean, Santa Barbara is a completely different sort of area, a feel, a vibe than Napa. And I wonder if that doesn't play into it with younger consumers. I would be interested to see what their visitation is like demographically.
Yeah, they are. It's a super interesting. I think they've done a really great job. Their AVA group has done a really great job in the way that they promoted things. They really drilled down. But there are other numbers that for Santa Barbara that aren't that great, and it's partly because of that experience. Like I said, they've had to, just by regulation, shove everybody into urban, and they really don't have a lot of vineyard tasting experiences. Let's look at slide 22. Let's go through a few of these. So annual change in net club growth rate. This is pretty interesting over the last year. You could see that in general, we kind of had a little bit of a declining trend in the growth rate, and then this last year just exploded. Average up 25%. And by the way, you know, as I look at the financial side of things, I don't have the data right in front of me, but last year, the premium wine industry grew by about 21%. That's not sustainable. You can't keep growing by 21%. But dollars are still up. And, you know, there's every reason to believe we're going to be somewhere around 10% on the premium side in terms of growth. But you know, clubs are still gonna drive things. Let's go to 23. So just the next slide. So wine club size by region, just to give you guys an idea of what that looks like.
These aren't big clubs. I hate to
Yeah.
say it. I know everyone works hard And I'd like to see everyone get to this size of club level. But when you look at subscription-based economy, things like Stitch Fix or, Blue Apron or,
Shave Club or-
all those,
yeah.
that they have gigantic clubs of, hundreds of thousands of people. So
It's a different experience again. And,
Like,
and it's a different capitalization structure because the small wineries are obviously going to have small clubs, right?
well, I agreed. I know there's limits and constraints on the different clubs, but I'm saying that there's a lot more wine in these wineries to be sold, and the clubs have a lot more room to grow. I can imagine your larger wineries would love to grow the clubs larger, and you're probably sitting around the 3 to 5 to 10, maybe at most 10,000s for certain clubs, but it's a struggle. I think we need to find a better value exchange for clubs. And in fact, if you go to slide 28, this is also a trend line that says a story, and it doesn't matter what size of winery you are. We're all trending at about the same amount of, 32 months, 33 months that we keep a club member for.
Mhm.
That's a ceiling by every region. So what it says to me is that we have to find another way to continue and engage with the customers to make them last longer in the value exchange. I don't know I would love to hear how you guys think we should expand the wine club membership length.
Well, I would say, I think we need to think about, again, is the tasting room really the main place where we find our customers? Because those are awesome, incredibly qualified customers. They know, you love their product, but are
And
they
the ones that Paul mentioned, many of them don't have tasting rooms.
right? Right. But how are you? It kind of goes to the other slide where it talked about that 17% on average of people coming into a club digitally. And so how are you going to capture some of those people that aren't going to get to your region no matter what? And then how are you going to keep those people?
Yeah.
Because as much as we're kind of, as the industry, as wineries, enamored with, okay, free compliment, or we can't say tastings included. We have like the tasting benefits,
Not free.
parties,
yeah.
events, things that you have to come to the winery. Really the biggest opportunity to grow your club is going to be people that can't come back to the winery
Or can't
not
come there
that
ever,
often.
or
Yeah.
come there
Or, yeah.
ever.
Or maybe come there ever. So how are you going to reach those people, and what benefits do they want? And
Which
maybe
is-
that's
Which is the whole,
shipping or,
it's the taking
know.
the experience on the road.
Right.
It's
That's cost prohibitive, very difficult as
Mhm.
well.
well,
Yeah.
yes and no. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe if you actually, let's just say, had a group of people that were in Minnesota, you had a small winery, and you had a group of people who are in Minnesota, you could grow that region. And with Zoom now, you could actually have experiences that are different. But if you work the lateral club, have a good experience, and you have people that are recommending that to their friends, now you have a social club that can grow, and actually it's a different experience. But Paul, to your point, or you guys' points, it's not a benefit to them to have a free coupon to bring in their friends to the tasting room. Just not a benefit.
No, I mean, if you look at the clusters, and I bet you could look at it, wineries within a 90-mile radius has over 60% of their club members, sometimes up to 80-90% of the club members are within a 90-mile radius. That says a story. That tells a really discrete story that we're not giving value to people that are going back to Texas or to, Missouri or to Florida in a way that keeps them and retains them. And yes, certain clubs have more footprint, that have better foot traffic, that are on Highway 29 or on Silverado Trail with big brands and such, but we still have a problem. If you look at our geographic coverage of how many club members that we're touching around the country versus the wine drinker populations in those states.
Right. Well, you brought up Stitch Fix and sort of the subscription economy. And I think part of the appeal, especially for younger people, millennials, Gen Zers, is the ability to just stop it whenever you want, right? You don't have to hang on to it. And unfortunately, the structure right now for a wine club is you have to take a certain allotment. You have to, stay with the club for a certain amount of time. You can't place it on hold, except for maybe one shipment per year. And I think we need to look at that and really say, are we driving these customers toward us, or are we actually putting sort of that timestamp on them for how long they'll stay with us?
Let's look at slide 27 if we can. So another interesting slide is as we're talking about, the non winery experience. this is just another interesting slide to me because it shows that the urban club is 1 month shorter than the winery club. But when you have both of those experience, you've actually extended the length of time. And why is that? Well, it's because you're giving something different.
Yeah.
And with to Paul's point, there's so many different wineries that are out there. And we talked about the agglomeration effect of wineries, tasting rooms being in a single region. There's that's obviously heavy competition. But when you change up your model, and I think predictive analytics can help there too. We haven't even touched that surface, but when you start to look at and do the data work on your exit points for your club members, what part of the journey do they leave, and then how are you addressing that? What kind of changes are you making? There's another slide in here that I think is pretty interesting. It's slide 30. By the way, there's a lot of slides that I think are interesting, and real quickly, this year we had I'm going to say 450 or so wineries respond to the survey. They're going to get about 75 slides. We'll be able to give you guys this small slide deck for the people that have watched this. But I just want to say one more time, we greatly value everybody that comes in and participates on this, because without your participation, if we can't get good participation, then we just can't provide this data, and we do it for free. It's it's a partnership though. We will do our part, but we really got to have you guys involved as well. So this last year we had it ended up being a pretty good turnout. 400 people is good, and it was pretty well spread out between the regions. So thank you for everybody that participated. You will get all the data. You'll get anonymized data on from Excel, taking out all of the comments, the name, the emails, all that kind of stuff. So you can't see who it comes from, but you can do your own data work on that.
That's important. I think we need to keep reminding people why this report is so important, and that if you sign up and give your data, you get data back for you to use for your own benchmarking. It's
right.
And you guys do it for free. It's a frustration for me. I think these are two gifts you give the Silicon Valley Bank. I know there's a lot of other people do surveys, but the work that you guys do on this report is invaluable.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I have to say it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of people. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars between the two. When you look at the total cost between the two reports, but the State of the Industry report in January and then this report in May, June. But it does give, I think, the industry and the trends that we have that go back now. State of the Industry goes back 20 years. We have data that goes back that far, even longer. And this is the 10th anniversary of the direct consumer videocast and survey. So we have that long of data to look at as well. And some people actually have kept all that data. One of my clients has. And again, just a quick commercial. If you're a client of Silicon Valley Bank and you want to have benchmarking done on this with your own winery, your account officers can do that for you. Let's look at this slide though. The wine club membership length by shipments per year. It's a little bit of a hard thing to get to, but the intent of this was to look at what is it. What is the right number of shipments to maximize the length of a club membership, maximize dollars? And so just to back up one step, I had a phone call once from somebody, and they said, I don't get anywhere near a 30-month club membership. I'm kind of more like 12. And I said, well, how many cases are you? You must be sending out once a month, cases once a month. They said, how'd you know? Well, that has to be. So this is an interesting slide to me because you can look at it. So wine club shipments per year, there's 12 on the far right side. And in this chart, it says that 12 shipments per year, and there's 2.7 bottles per shipment. So a lot of small shipments, and they end up with 64 bottles, total over that period of time, over that year. And so in some respects, you could look at this chart and you can say, hey, you know what? Let's just let's just fill everybody's gullet up with as many bottles as we can over the course of a year.
Right.
But I think people forget about the acquisition costs.
How much can you drink in a year? I mean, when you saturate, I think we have to look at what we're delivering again in the box. I think there are certain types of clubs, for example, I know a club that did rosés during the summer, they deliver a case a month. That's great. That's your sipping by the pool rosé, and they stopped at the end of the summer. So it was a consumption club, really. And anything else is like buying Hint water at a discount because I'm drinking Hint water all the time, or drinking rosé by the pool all the time.
Right.
But I think that we're not solving the problem, which is, what does that customer need? And that's why I love that rosé story, because it was great. They knew that during summertime, people wanted to have this sip. They're having friends over, and they made it inexpensive to buy that at a pretty good discount. So.
Mhm.
We're getting toward the end, and so I just want to wrap up with a few things. First of all, we should have the report available on link on our site, I believe today or tomorrow. I don't have the, we're, as I said, we're not as smooth in putting this all together this year as we have been in past years. It's been a little bit more of an effort to recover, as I'm sure you guys are dealing with the same things, but the report should be available. Everybody that participated in the report should get, in the survey, I should say, they should get their data here in the next few weeks. And the full 100 or so slides that are in that report. So, and again, thank you to everybody that did participate. Let's see, what else? I guess we'll just wrap up. I mean, thank you everybody for tuning in this time. We're grateful for your participation with us, and grateful for all of your questions. Thanks to our panelists, and we have, I just believe, a lot of opportunity ahead of us next year, despite all the crosswinds of confusion and not as many tailwinds as maybe we'd like. I think the high end of the market has got a lot of opportunity. The lower price point below $11 wines have a lot of work to do, but I'm optimistic about the years ahead and what we have, and especially in the next couple of years. There is a lot of opportunity, but you got to work it, and it's there's never been more opportunity. There's never been more opportunity to look at the data, to do the things, to see change. We just went through this period of time where it was like a test tube. We went through and we looked at what happens with taking out the tasting room, no restaurant sales, and we saw what happened. So think about those things and what things work. What can you carry forward? That's where the opportunity lies. So with that, thank you very much for tuning in. We're looking forward to seeing you guys next time at Silicon Valley Bank.